welcome back to Becoming Young. I am Janae, this is Josh, and we have a really exciting topic to address today. We are going to be addressing the power of mindset in longevity. Josh, what do you think about this topic?
So this is a really important one for me, Janae. This was sort of my introduction to getting healthier and living longer in the first place. And I think it's something that sort of falls behind and is not sort of top on folks' lists. And it's the saboteur, right, for a lot of things, for diet, if people are trying to lose weight and all things. But I think when you're looking at longevity and how you're feeling and aging, this is a big one, right? And this idea of a growth mindset or a fixed mindset, and what does that mean, right? Tell me a minute about and take me through what your journey has been with your own mindset.
Okay, so there's a couple of things I want to address with growth mindset. So one of the things, I'm obviously raising children who are young, and when children are young, they tend to have more of a closed mindset because a lot of times, at least with my kids, they think they know what they're doing and they think they know everything. And so I'll come in and try and teach them something and they're like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. I already know. And, I have to remember to step back and say, okay, that is a closed mindset. And when you have that, you're not open to learning something new, right? Now, one of the ways I teach them that is I say, your father and I had an incredibly open mindset. So when we approached a problem, we thought, how can this be solved? Versus, can't do it. Nope, there's too many problems, which that's what my kids tend to go to pretty naturally. So then I proceed to tell them we built a very successful and financially abundant business because that mindset created the ability to see how can this problem be solved versus, oh, you can't do that. Oh, you can't do that. And then you have this wall that stops you. Oh, you can't do that. A wall that stops you. But if you really ask yourself the question, okay, this is a huge problem. I see the wall. How can I get over it? How can I get around it? How can I get through it? And again, your brain wants to answer that question. So if you're saying, how can we solve this problem versus nope, you can't, your brain gets to work and you find ways. So I can literally look at any problem and I will and can figure out a way to solve it. It's unbelievable. And it's a skill that's built over time. And now I approach anything and I am just like, I know that I can solve this problem. So then the second part of this that I want to just address within the mindset is, and I've told this story before, but when I turned 30, I just decided I am going to get younger now. I just decided that. And like, what research went into that? None. Did I think about it? Did I start feeling scared about getting old? No, I just thought, I want to get younger. I'm 30 years old now, and I know that the world tells me I'm going to get old and decrepit, and my life is going to go downhill the older I get. And I just said, I don't want to believe that. And so I decided not to. So I made a choice at 30 to get younger. And, that was over a decade ago. And I can tell you with certainty, at the age I am now, I feel better, look better, perform better than I ever have in any of my younger years. And I have the experience of over 40 years of living life with an open mindset, asking myself, how can this be solved? How can we get through this? What is the answer? And I cannot tell you how powerful the outcome has been in my life in attracting the answers to those questions. And so this particular topic is so powerful in my life because, I just made a simple decision at age 30 to get younger. I didn't have any supplements. I didn't have any research. I didn't have, a Brian Johnson out there saying this is possible. I just made a choice. And then all of a sudden, as I made that choice, things started coming into my life to support that decision I already made in my mind.
Yeah, you do. You attract, right, whatever you are subconsciously brewing in there. I mean, so let me tell you a little bit about where my mindset sort of made this switch over into that growth mindset, right, which was during COVID. And I'm sure I've told you this before, Janae, but I ran a lot of marathons during COVID.
Which again, there's those runners and I'm making fun of them like, oh, you look like you're torturing yourself.
Well,
I would have been on the sidelines making fun of you, Josh.
I was torturing. I remember running. I did 13 marathons in a year, and a lot of times it was every 2 weeks.
Yeah,
and
that's
so,
intense.
which by the way is just like that's not normal. So, but the goal was to just finish. That was my goal.
Sure.
And we kept getting. I ran with my buddy Scott, and we just kept getting faster, and we kept getting faster, right? And we kept finishing, and then I realized that had I told myself many months ago, right, many months previous, that I was going to be running a marathon every few weeks and finishing a marathon and being okay with that, and my body was going to be keeping up with that, right? I would have told you that you were smoking crack.
Sure.
Like that didn't make any sense to me, right? But now I'm realizing, man, here I am. I'm able to continue running. I'm finishing. I did end up with some tendonitis in my foot, but generally speaking, I was not injured, right? And it made me understand that what was actually holding me back was just what was going on with my mindset, right? And what my expectations were. And it really sort of set me up, because the other thing that I think is really important, because I don't know that many people in the audience probably doesn't think about, these are the things that I think about, but I don't think these are things that other people think about, which is this having the mind of like a scientist, right? I mean, we all got taught in 5th and 6th grade, right, about having a hypothesis about something and the scientific method, and like what happens. You have a set of data, and then you try to test against that data, and you either confirm your hypothesis with data, or you like don't confirm it. And if you don't confirm it, the hypothesis needs to be changed, and then you need to check something else. The idea that our life, right, and the things that we're participating on can be affected in that way is sort of, I think, we forgot about 5th and 6th grade, right? We forget that you're allowed to change your mind, right? Your mind, you can have a mindset.
You can have a choice, and then you can change your mind.
Isn't it amazing?
Wow, that's
it's
powerful.
Unbelievable.
Did you guys hear that? Like, remember, in your life, you can make a decision, you can make a choice, and when something better comes into your space, you can change your mind.
Or if different data presents itself. So this is, especially around health and wellness, this is so unbelievable, right? Because people hear one thing and, like, let's remember, if you put too much salt on your food, you're going to have a heart attack, right? Well, that data was not exactly
not quite
what
correlated the way
that
we
looked,
thought
right?
at
So,
that time.
But now we know better. Now we know that the data is not quite, that's not exactly what that data said, right?
So that means we can add extra salt to everything, right?
Exactly. Perfect. Yes. But being able to take being able to take that into account, and being able to apply new data, and being okay with abandoning your position. I talk about this all the time with folks. They say, well, wait a minute, you said X, Y, and Z 2 years ago, and now you're saying this other thing that seems to be opposite. Well, I got some data that made me change my mind, and that's okay. And so I think we have to just be opening our mind to not only having that growth mindset, right, of being able to understand that things are possible, but also be accepting of the data that might change our mind. And I always, something that I love in my sort of inner circle, like, I always challenge people, change my mind. I would love
challenge
for you to convince me.
Right. So this is where I'd love to, again, hear from our viewers and the people listening in. What are the decisions you've made about your life, and how are they playing out in the reality of what you've decided? For better and for worse. What are the decisions that you've made about yourself, or about your life, or about your habits that don't really support what you want? What are the choices and the decisions you've made in your life that really powerfully support what you want? And, that gives you the opportunity to pause and reflect on which ones do you want to change, and which ones do you want to continue and grow and expand, because this is where the power of the mind comes in. Now, I was just listening to a podcast, and it was on longevity and talking about, choice and things like that. And there was a study, and I don't have the reference to this, but we'll find it. But they were talking about the difference between the placebo effect, which is when you have a study or you have a group where, both groups are given some type of, some some substance that's being studied, whether it's a drug or a mindset or whatever, it doesn't matter. But then there's also the power of the mind. So it's a decision you make, and it's actually more powerful than the placebo effect. So when the subjects were told that they were given something and they actually weren't, it was more powerful than when they were told you may or may not have it, we'll see what happens. And, they think maybe they're getting it, and then there's that placebo effect. But the power of being told and then making a decision in your mind, yes, I have whatever it is that's making me feel, more energy or better or more powerful, just the decision you made in your mindset was actually more potent than the placebo effect, and sometimes even the subject matter being studied.
It's interesting, and I have to go back because I read through that whole study, right? And it's a little perplexing and almost mind-blowing, right? Because what they found was that the people who got the actual drug but were told that they didn't get the drug,
it didn't work as well.
The drug didn't work as well as the people who really got the drug and were told that they got the drug. What does that mean, right? I mean, that shows you that there is a crazy connection of some sort, and I'm quite sure that we don't understand all of the science behind that, but it shows an unbelievably powerful connection between the subconscious, right, and your subconscious, like, autonomous systems in your body. I mean, there is no way, Janae, that if you gave me an antibiotic, right, that I should have control in my mind over how effective that antibiotic is that's in my bloodstream.
Right. But basically you're saying in this study showing that our minds potentially could negate effects of, things that we're trying to do. But then on the flip side of that, how powerful could mindset be in addition to the things that we are, putting in our bodies and creating as additional helpful substances, whether it's mindset, a drug, a supplement, any of those things, how much more powerful can it be coupled with a mindset?
Yeah, so I think when you think about that and you think about the barriers, right, that we put up in front of ourselves, I think it's important to talk about how do we overcome those? What types of things can we do in order to put ourselves on the other side? And so I'm going to give you my trick, right, on what I do, which is I'll coin this term now, right? It's the Leanin Method. Right? So anytime that I have something that is a barrier, anytime that I have something that is difficult, I lean in, right? So I embrace the difficulty and I figure out, how do I spend more time? How do I focus on it, right? How do I come to love the difficulty? And it really is a very odd thing, because over time, the stress around those barriers sort of starts to go away. And then when you have a barrier come up, everything becomes an opportunity. I know that sounds cliche. It really sounds cliche, but it is important, especially when we're talking about health and fitness. Sorry, my headphones are falling all over today. But when we talk about our bodies and health, it's really important that we're not sort of getting in our own way. And there's already a lot of things that are out of our control. Right. So for me, I've said this to you before. I like anything that's in my circle of control. I love my circle of control.
Right. Because we love to naturally want to control things and their outcomes. Right. Because it feels like there is that sense of control, and then it almost feels safer. But the reality is we don't have that control, right? We don't.
Absolutely, we don't. And so I like to have the stuff that's super close to me so that I can feel like I have some of that. And that's just my anal retentive, anxious personality, right? Being able to kind of do some of those things. If I'm doing these things, then the things that are outside of my control aren't taking my focus, right? And I'm not stressing out about those. So the Leanin Method is what I use to try to overcome that stuff. And that goes if you're a procrastinator, right? It goes to that as well. And the psychology is super strong there. Like if you have something that you're feeling like you need to put off, guess what? The best way is to do it right away. do it right away.
And that's the
What do you
harder thing to do until you do it, and then you realize it's the easier thing. So what I do, kind of along the lines of what you're saying here, is, what I'm hearing you say is kind of acceptance, right? That's how I define it. That's the word I use. And then a lot of times when I accept something, that does not mean I like it. So in the past, what I've done is I try to change it, or I put a lot of energy into resisting it or trying to ignore it. Now I can look at something and say, yeah, okay, I've got extra wrinkles on my face right now. I don't like that.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Thanks. But, it's those things that, and this is actually a really good point, because it may not even be reality, right? Some of the things we don't like. But if I can look at it and accept it and then say, and I don't like it, but I don't have to change it. I actually don't have control over it. And that's it. Like, I don't make any more decisions beyond that. I don't try to resist it. I don't say, oh, I hate my face now because I saw a wrinkle, because then I'm putting all this energy into resisting the things that I don't like or don't want, that I'm perceiving, that may or may not even be reality. But if I just say, yeah, I saw a wrinkle on my face, I don't like it, and I just let that be, all of a sudden I start to accept it. And then actually I start to love that I may have a wrinkle. And the reality is I do have some wrinkles. And the other reality is I love them, because when I smile, I see them, and they flare the joy in my face in a really positive, beautiful way. And so then it doesn't become something that I'm scared of. It becomes something that I am now embracing. And so now I'm not putting any energy into, trying to resist it or change it or make it something that it's not, or, even like conjure up that it's worse than it is. And change my perception, but I just allow it to be. And instead of putting energy into resistance, I don't put any energy into resisting it. And then I learn to love and embrace it. So this goes for problems in your life. This goes for relationships. This goes for, your relationship with your food, with your nutrition, with your exercise. Allow, accept, and embrace things as they are. And then that allows you to create, as we talked about in a different episode, the habits that you really want to create, because you're not putting energy into resisting. Now, this all goes back to the mindset, right? So if you are creating a mindset where you can accept anything, again, you now have an open and growth mindset. And this is the biggest challenge to implementing these mindset shifts. And this is where we really want to dive into, how do we as a community, as a group, and then individually, how do we make these types of changes last? And I think one of the most powerful things we can do as a community is share. So this is again where I want to hear, what are the things that you don't want to accept in your life? What are the things you want to change? And how much energy are you putting into trying to make it something that it is inherently not? And what would it look like if you could just allow it to be as it is? And then if you did that, what is possible within that acceptance?
I love that. And I think I want to touch back, though, real quick on something else that you said, which is the acceptance, right, piece. And I think that looks different for different people. And so one of the things that I think about, particularly when it comes to acceptance, is not necessarily, I think a lot of people may think of that as settling, right? Like, it's not settling. For me, what I do is it's a celebration for me, right? And so this is sort of how, like, people make fun of me sometimes for being super excited, right, about certain things. It's because I would much rather be excited about a decision than not excited about a decision, right? And so I've shifted my mindset that when I make a choice one way or the other on something, I get excited about it, even on really silly things. And so what it does is it programs my brain and reinforces, right,
This is
those
why Josh
neural
gets
pathways.
so excited about eating an apple, by the way.
I get so excited about an apple and peanut butter. It's like
one of my favorite
I
snacks.
mean, it is a great snack, but I get like actually excited about it. Like I'll be like cutting the apple and my mouth will be watering, not because of necessarily how good it tastes, but because how pre-programmed I am to certain decisions that I make, right? And it's amazing because it kind of goes back to that Steve Jobs I think I talked about it in another episode, but Steve Jobs and the whole idea of limiting decisions. My body is anticipating the fact that I haven't had to make a decision or that I have made a good decision, and it kicks off all of these other things internally in me, which then just reinforces again, right? So celebrating each of those decisions is going to be key to maintaining that mindset through your longevity journey.
Yes. And so this brings me to my last point around this is, what if, especially along the lines of celebrating decisions, what if every decision you made was the right decision? So, in business, I've made some decisions that I felt like were wrong, and I ruminate over them, and I just try and go back in my mind. What if I would have made this? I should have done this, shoulda, woulda, coulda, right? All that. And I waste so much energy on thinking back in time to something that no longer exists, where now I've learned to embrace, I made this decision, this was the outcome, I didn't like it. What have I learned from it? I've learned X, Y, Z, and 10 million other things that have actually made me a better decision maker. And so then I go back to that decision that at one point in time I was ruminating on, thinking that I made a poor decision and it's, affecting my life in a negative way, and I could have done so much better, and I wish I would have. And I let go of all that negativity. And I look at it and I say, this decision has taught me so much and made me so much more of a powerful decision maker with now experience behind it. So the next time a decision similar to this comes up, not only do I make a better, more powerful decision, but I learn more, and then I'm building the skill within my brain of making these decisions that create outcomes that I really want. And therefore, feeding this belief I now have created that I always make the right decisions. And whatever the outcome is, I get to learn from it, and I get to enjoy the positive benefits of it. And the negative benefits are that I get to learn. And so everything becomes such a great experience, like you said, to be celebrated.
This is the thing. We are our own worst enemies, Janae, right? And so I don't know who said it. There was some philosopher that talked about the ruminations in our mind, right? And the fact that we basically screw ourselves up by thinking over and over about all these things and what could have been and should have been. And the fact of the matter is that you and I have no way to know, even if we made different decisions, if those would have turned out the way that we anticipate they would have, right? If we would have if we thought that those were the right decisions. There's just no way for us to know.
No.
So sort of unhooking ourselves from that sort of, what a masochistic sort of mindset that is, isn't it?
To think about. And yet, how often do we all ruminate and get into that space, right?
Absolutely. So I think we've talked about a lot of stuff today, specifically around trying to drive people forward and give yourself grace. I think that is, if I could take any of these things and sort of pull them up and tie them into something that's a higher, one takeaway is, I think most people, and I am yours truly included, is one of the worst, right? I think it's hard to give yourself grace. And give yourself the space to make whatever decision you're going to make and to learn. It is hard to say, hey, this is something I need to learn from. But all of this stuff is so important when we talk about our health and how to build that lasting change, because this is a long road, and being able to stay with it and have that stick with itness, right, to this kind of stuff. It is a skill, and it is something that you need to practice in order for it to be something that happens naturally.
Yes, and it's a skill that I want all of us to engage in building. And so this is where I want to hear, what if you, right now listening, had the belief that every decision you make is the correct decision. And I want to hear about the decisions that you've made that didn't turn out the way you wanted, and how is it exactly the right decision for you? The outcomes you didn't like, what did you learn? The outcomes you did like, how was it amazing, and how can you repeat it? But really just sit for a minute in that choice. If you could really make that choice, I make every single decision in my life, and it's the best decision for me. I make all the right decisions. Really just close your eyes for a minute and lean into the feeling of what that would feel like, and then share with us, What does that look like in your life, in reality? Past decisions, and in the future, projecting that choice. I make all the decisions I make in my life, they're the right ones. What kind of a life would you live if you really, truly believed that? I want to hear.
How young could you feel?
Exactly. So this
awesome.
has
All
been
right. Well, take us out.
Yes, this has been such a great episode, Josh. Thank you for engaging in this, how powerful this discussion is around mindset. This, even though this was one of our shorter episodes, this may be one of the most potent secrets to becoming young continually. Because I know for me, when I made the choice to become young, it was all in my mind. That's where it started. And it's played out in such a powerful way in my life because I just decided that. And I didn't have anything to support that decision other than that's what I want. And how powerful is it when you really embrace what you want and then allow things to come into your life that support what you want. So thank you for joining us on this journey and continually creating, what it is that we want. So Josh, take us home. I think that this is, like I said, one of the biggest, best kept secrets of longevity.
Thanks for joining us. I hope that this has been a mind shift for you. I know this was a big one for me. Janae and I can't wait to see you next time.